Hello.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Mic check, mic check.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3.
Glizzy's on me.
Lizzie's on me, on my face, and on my throat. Whoa, pause.
Nice.
It got intense.
We're not editing that out. We're gonna keep
No,
that.
that's just gonna be the first thing.
Okay.
I want a
We'll
glizzy.
edit that out. Glizzies are amazing. You know what I mean? I don't know why they get so much hate. I think it stems from homophobia. I hate it. You know, that's why I probably eat.
That sounds about right.
That's why.
It is.
Like, yeah, definitely. That's why I probably eat the glizzies because so the fuck what? Who cares? What are you gonna do about it?
That's like the craziest thing. I remember even being in like middle school when like kids wouldn't want to eat bananas because it's like suck a dick, and I'm like, bro, eat the fucking banana. What's wrong with you? Like, who gives a shit? I never understood.
My wife will joke whenever I eat like an ice cream or something. She'll just be like, gay, and I'll be like, you're goddamn right, and I shove the whole thing in my mouth.
You see how far you go all the way to the start.
Bro, he goes all the way to like that chocolatey little taint at the end of the cone.
Yeah, the proper deep throat. Absolutely.
No, the popsicle touches the little.
I would
swingy ball in the
enjoy
back of your
glizzies
throat.
more. I would enjoy glizzies more if I could eat the bun.
Why can't you eat the bun?
Because I have celiac disease.
They don't have like
I
a
never knew
vegan
that.
bun or something.
Most places, well, the vegan bun still has bread in it. You gotta have a gluten-free bun.
What you need is
Ooh.
corn dogs.
Corn dogs better. A lot of times they still have bullshit in it that makes me shit myself.
Oh, for real? I thought like it was all corn.
It's like I think they still use wheat.
You just gotta eat straight up Glizzy then.
Yeah, like I eat just glizzy and not like the wrapping that goes with the glizzy, and I feel like the experience is lost.
So you're just like
It
raw
is.
dogging
Raw dog
glizzies.
Do you dip your
Absolutely.
glizzies into like ketchup or something at least, or sour cream? Pause.
Sour cream.
Sour cream.
What?
That's
I mean,
after.
I don't personally do that, but you know.
You don't put mayo on your hot dog, do you?
Well, yeah, Mexican,
I do.
yeah, we do that in Mexico. Actually, we put mayo and we put like jalapenos and stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds gross, but it's actually good.
None of my Mexican family has ever put mayo. They'll put jalapenos.
You don't even have the
Well, it depends on where
credentials,
your family's
bro.
from.
You're fucking mutt.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, my family's straight from the pueblo, bro. Straight from the rancho.
I'm talking about my family in Hidalgo.
Yeah, you fucking gusanos, right?
Oh, I can't stand gusanos.
Fucking words.
Gusanitos. No huele nada.
No, not at all. Don't speak too much Spanish though, because then Spotify is gonna throw off our demographic, and we'll probably get canceled sooner rather than later. Because Tucker Carlson will be like, "These Mexican Marxists," and you know, it's just not gonna work out for us.
A bunch of Mexicans on damn TikTok talking Marxism, and we're gonna invade Mexico.
They'll
That's
call
what
And
us-
then they'll say some shit like the Soviet Union would have ethnically cleansed people like you. I'm like, there's brown people in the USSR, bro. There's like minorities. There's like people of color in there. Like the USSR was not a monolith. It's just white people. There's
Right.
so much cultures and so much other ethnicities there.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's-
vibrant and beautiful.
That's the thing. East Europe is like Schrodinger's white guy. Like they're only white when it comes to like brown, but then when it comes to like, you know, the proxy war with NATO, then they just bust out the racial slurs and call them disgusting shit like orcs and nonsense like that. Like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I've deleted some. I'm barely Eastern European, right? And of descent, like my family's been here in America forever. Well, not forever, but 100 years at least.
forever.
And I've deleted so many comments calling me a fucking orc, or they do the physiognomy check where they're like, oh, this guy looks like a Jew, and like, okay, yeah, you know what? I am an orc, a Jewish fucking orc.
Good lord.
So I just run with it at this point. Just Christ.
Oh man, that's crazy. Well, anyway, so
Hi.
welcome to Kollectiv Podcast, episode 4. I'm Ivan, and whoever, let's just do this clusterfuck. Who wants to introduce themselves next? Go for it.
I'm Comrade Larry, and I.
Christ. You all waited the same exact amount of time. This is why we can't get shit done.
We can't get anything done, but I will say, Comrade Larry, Jewish orc official.
Oh my god.
Compañero Cruz, resident mutt.
Hi, my name is Rick. I'm white as the driven snow. I go by this.loud.is.fire here on TikTok.
Yeah, he's our guest for today's episode.
Welcome.
And
thank you for
me
coming.
here, the taco eater, Marxist-Leninist, Stalinist, tanky.
Red Fish.
Reporting live. Yes.
The revisionist mayo on the Glizzy.
No one only.
And I am Comrade Cutie Pie. There's nothing else important about me.
Wow.
I'm so fucking adorable, guys. You don't even know.
You are pretty cute.
I do know, actually. I do know.
Bro's a cutie.
Should we be saying this? He's like crazy young.
He's like 21.
Okay, and we're old.
I'm 24.
Yeah, I'm actually. I was gonna say like I was like a really low number, but then I low key thought that like TikTok was gonna be like, oh, he admitted it. Time to ban this account.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, I mean, Murta, you're like 1 year away from having chronic back pain. So when you're
I already do. I do already, brody. I'm
It's
destroyed. I played football growing up, so
Yeah.
add tributes to it.
Football or football?
No, I didn't play soccer. I'm sorry. I wasn't that Mexican.
Oh, so
I know,
you can
I'm
go to the
sorry.
Google.
I
Disgrace.
played
I'm
soccer,
sorry.
so that's okay. I took it from you.
Hey, well
Nice.
that's your Irish side right there. Well, Irish.
I would play rugby if I was like full on my Irish side, or I'd play soccer in like the weirdest way possible. I'd be like, I can pick it up, guys. Trust me.
Jeez. So, I actually have a confession to make, everyone. I'm not actually a communist, because I got a little too excited that it was Prime Day the other day, and I spent a bunch of money that I don't have on podcast equipment, which we'll be showing off next week, hopefully. So, not a communist. I'm actually a reactionary conservative, because, iPhone.
Absolutely. I too have strayed from the path when I was informed that it was Prime Day. I had to one of my drinks because they were $30 instead of $40 for the 24 pack, which as a worker saves me half an hour's work. That was half of one of my labor vouchers, I was able to save.
I may or may not have purchased a solid state drive to resurrect a dead computer. So I too am a champagne socialist.
Absolutely.
I mean, you guys got stuff that's like useful though. I went online and I was like, I'm gonna buy myself some New Balance 550 sneakers and a hoodie in teal green. This would be such a sick fit. And then after I bought it, it was like a week later. I was like, oh, yikes.
Yeah.
I do the same shit. Fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, I already have white shorts. It would be fucking sick.
Talk briefly about this stupid purity fetish that gets projected upon us because we happen to be critics of how the system works, yet we still have to live in it, of course. And, we're just, I just picture, when we were talking about this the other night, I was just picturing we're all little rats stuck in this big cage, and we have to run around the wheel to make it turn and everything, and then when payday or Prime Day comes around, we get the little water bottle and the treat, and it comes down, and we scramble over each other to get a taste of that fucking water, And we all have to do it, right? Because otherwise we'll fucking die. But we have to participate in it. But we go over there and we suck on the water like a titty or a glizzy, whatever you prefer. Except that when the communists go back to the rat wheel, we are sitting there devising plans to dismantle the rat and get the fuck out, all of us.
I'm on the rat wheel.
That's the
just
difference.
looking at the person saying, "Hey, we don't have to be on this rat wheel, right? We could all stop on the rat wheel.
We could.
We could just stop.
Right. Exactly. And, people will criticize communists for not being in a poverty cult when, one, why would we do that? Why would we not use the tools of capital, so to say, to push our agenda? I mean, isn't that what this podcast is? Like, Anticapitalist Media is getting more and more popular, and it's going to be allowed because it gives the peasants something to do and listen to and generate money all the way up until the very end. I mean, it was Marx, or was it Marx or Lenin who said, who verbatim was like, the last capitalist we hang will be the one who sold us the rope.
That was Marx.
Right.
That was
exactly.
Marx.
It is interesting to think about it, specifically with like movies and the boom of anti-capitalist messaging, because the executives are making a bunch of money off of stuff like that. But eventually, if they allow too much of that rhetoric in there, it could actually inspire people to be, you know what, we should live like how it is in these movies. We should take these people down.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, that's what we're,
They'll inspire they'll inspire their own downfall.
And they certainly have been. I mean, you could see it on. I did another podcast with he's our friend Evan over on Left of the Projector on what was the movie called? Oh geez, the one on the boat when all those people are on the yacht. God damn it! What is it called?
Jaws?
Titanic?
No, not Jaws. It's a relatively recent movie. Triangle of Sadness. There we go. Yeah, we did that episode,
Woody.
and Woody, and literally, like so many people are like, "Oh my god, it's like so interesting to see, the poor people who work on the boat to have like this proto uprising," and I'm like, "Yeah, exactly."
It is great to see in media more accurate portrayals of poverty too, and working class conditions. Because in the past they try to hide it. Like, think about Friends, where she's a waitress but can afford like a 2-bedroom loft apartment in the middle of New York City.
Especially third world poverty, because a lot of the crew on that boat, as in most luxury vessels, are people who come from like the Philippines or Africa. And a lot of people, when they hear us in the first world or the Western world, whatever it's called, talk about Marxist ideology, they often will turn around and say, well, you live in America, or you live in Europe, you live in this wonderful place. And I don't think they necessarily realize that while we are also advocating for our own liberation, we're also talking about people who are completely destitute. People who work in these plantations or mines who never even get to see or hold the product that they produce. All they do is work and then they die.
Yeah, speaking to like the ocean-going sort of working class, like the people who are working in things like cruise ships are the higher earners. They're like at the bottom of that level. There's been like so many extreme cases of literal slavery where people with, like, there was a man in 2018, they found that he had been chained to the boat around his neck for years. There's so a podcast called Outlaw Oceans that has a whole episode on sea slavery, and the thing about that is like it's so outside of any nation state that you can't really, like, no nation state wants to claim that it's their problem, because like the vessels, like the captains from one nation, like the vessels flags in another nation, all of the products going to a third nation, and they never they don't dock for years. They're just out, like, it shipments back and forth. And so, like, there's nobody, because it's outside of, like, this nation state thing, but it's still within capitalism, immediately goes back to slavery. And it goes to show exactly, like, what capitalists would do without the state. It's like, we can see what is going on right now in places where the state can't reach them. They're just doing slavery.
Yeah.
And probably where, you know, when the state can reach them, the state's not vested in doing anything about it. You know, doubling down on my lack of communist credentials, I went on a cruise, and it really like opened my eyes to, like, I mean, like, I knew this, but like the myth of like how much space human beings take, and the myth of scarcity it's a myth. Like, one, there's like 2,000 people on this mall on the water, and you're telling me that somehow we're overpopulated, and then there's so much goddamn food, and even though it's a good time, but like you realize that like all of this, not like how much of this is going to waste, like all of this to feed us privileged fucks, and you know that at the end of the day that so much of this could just go to feeding, you know, other people.
Yeah, something like that shouldn't be able to exist while people are, you know, starving to death. Right. And if everything was evenly distributed and everyone had all the food and shelter that they needed, and something like a cruise ship still existed, it'd be a different story at that point.
Right.
But we're way justified.
No, absolutely. Speaking of justification, listen to this. Ukraine receives cluster munitions, pledges limited use. So, for those of you who are not aware, the U.S. State Department and Pentagon approved the, I don't even want to say sale, but the provisions of cluster bombs to the armed forces of Ukraine. So, somebody in this group who's smarter than me, what is a cluster munition?
Cluster munitions are what we dropped on Laos. So basically, each bomb contains a bunch of tiny little bombs, which some of them go off and some of them don't. And something like 45% of the left behind, the victims of the bombs that don't go off and then go off later, are children.
Yeah.
So it's a war crime. Because of that, because it lasts for a long time after it's been dropped, and it's also, the victims aren't even adults.
Now, it was Laos that is the most bombed country on Earth, correct?
Yeah.
So.
Every night and day for I forget how many 3 years it was.
That's
probably about 3 years. So.
Yeah, it was. And
we dropped more bombs on it than we did during the entirety of like World War II.
Yes.
So
that's just crazy.
Apparently, they were a bigger threat than Germany, I guess. I don't know.
That too, which nobody likes to talk about because Pol Pot was in Cambodia. But yeah, Cambodia got a nice dose of our cluster munitions too. So, you know.
One of the terrifying things about cluster munitions in this case and in the case of Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam for that matter is that when you drop cluster munitions over farm fields, it makes those fields very, very dangerous to try to produce anything. You can't use them until you've gone through them with like minesweeping. And so like that, especially when you consider how much grain output there is from the places that they're fighting, is like it's terrifying to like think that they're just going to create food supply problems, probably globally. I mean, this war already has created global food chain problems, but like it's gonna like cluster munitions could make those issues more permanent, or at least last a lot further in the future and cost a lot more to get back to where we were before the war. That's one of the big problems they have in Laos.
Yep.
So, I mean, what does it say? I think we all know what it says, but what does it say about the United States, doing something like this? I mean, I thought we were trying to defend freedom and democracy, and it looks like these kind of weapons are just going to kill and maim, civilian targets.
Got to keep the war money flowing. That's all they're really care about. Money, at the end of the day, is what drives their interests. And if they can make a quick buck causing, pain and suffering, they're going to do that, especially if they can gain control over a region.
Absolutely. A big Israel is what they've said they want.
Yep.
I really like in this article here from Reuters, where they say that the bombs are only going to be used in occupied territories. But the Russian Federation did have referendums where certain oblasts, I think it was Luhansk and Donetsk, or a couple others too, voted to join the Federation. So that piece of language there is basically saying, well, it's technically not Russia, so we can just go ahead and go crazy on these civilian areas.
Yeah, they're definitely going to get dropped on Donetsk and Luhansk for sure, because that's, you can make the argument, I guess, that a lot of those republics that, or oblasts that voted to join Russia, were coerced or whatever, right? But, we know that Donetsk and Luhansk, are huge hubs for, Russian nationalism and separatism. So they're 100% going to use it on civilians there.
Wild, absolutely wild. Just keep the war machine going and promoting war crimes. And when we were having this conversation the other day about war crimes, Cruz, you brought up the American Service Members Protection Act. What is that?
Did I bring up?
It's the American Invasion of the Hague is the less formal name.
I forgot the name of the damn thing. Yeah, so if the United States has ever tried for war crimes, which, as we can see right now, they are committing by selling cluster bombs and utilizing cluster bombs in the Ukrainian war, if they are ever brought to trial at The Hague, the United States has a legal provision to bomb it.
Right. That's
in the Netherlands itself.
And they will. There are several high NATO command generals who are just like, "Oh, you motherfuckers, just try and do it. We'll bomb that egg."
Right.
They want to.
Effective August 2nd, 2002, known informally as the Hague Invasion Act, is the United States federal law described as a bill to protect the United States military personnel and other elected and appointed officials of the United States government against criminal prosecution by an international criminal court to which the United States is not party. So the United States isn't even part of the International Criminal Court.
No.
So much for the land of freedom and justice that they're not even recognize themselves as part of the rest of the world in that sense.
And could you imagine the international response if the United States straight up bombed the Netherlands?
That'd be really interesting. I mean, there'd definitely be crazy amount of people justifying it, but I wonder what Europe would do, because I mean, the United States blatantly destroyed the what was that pipeline called? Nord Stream 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess this would be way more overt, have some kind of ship off the coast.
Yeah.
I mean, I think France would go feral if the Hague got bombed.
It would absolutely.
France would definitely drop nukes on everybody. They stink. Oh my! I just gotta bring this up. They stunk 500 years ago, and they still stink today. If you ever go to France, it stinks. I've never been there, but I've heard stories. It smells like piss. All my homies hate France and England.
God damn.
For any of the French listeners, we're talking about the French bootlickers.
Jesus
yes,
Christ.
the governments, the working classes of these countries, We absolutely love you guys,
Joe,
and you guys
awesome.
deserve liberation. Actually, I
They smell
literally
like
mean that. I
mint
genuinely mean
and
that.
pine needles.
Those ones smell good. Now the bourgeois over there and their streets, sometimes their streets stinky.
I'm here
No,
for
like you
socialist
just got to
party.
talk shit about Paris because even the rest of France is like, yeah, no, fuck them.
So-
and it's Paris that fucking smells. It's like gross. It
So
is
what
fine.
Yeah, I think
city
it's
would
just
Paris
Paris.
be comparable in the United States?
Ohio.
It's Cincinnati. No,
Cincinnati.
I don't know, like
no.
What about St.
Cleveland.
Louis?
like
St. Louis,
Boston
yeah.
plus New Orleans.
What?
I don't know.
Do you mean like the smell or the city in general? Because it's a city that smells like Gary,
The
Indiana.
vibe.
But like,
The vibe. The vibe of St. Louis is Albania, my friends. We all
We're not
know.
talking about St. Louis. We're talking about Paris.
St. Louis, Paris,
Paris,
Albania.
Texas.
Paris, Texas specifically. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there is an equivalent to Paris in the United States. It's just there's nothing. It's I mean, almost I would say like the Hamptons or something like that, like a small section, like just with people that you can't stand.
there's like architecture and a subway, which makes it unlike any American city ever. Basically, like
right.
it's like
Yeah.
so the vibes are not. Yeah,
American cities are a special sort of nightmare hellscape that we don't,
Right.
There's just one more lane and another parking lot, then all of our problems would be solved.
I was just about to say.
Well, did you see Egypt? What was it? Alexandria just had a 10-lane highway open, and it was already fogged.
Yeah.
Just one more
I
lane, bro.
hate
Lanes
this
is
car centric
fucking wild.
society, and I hate the suburbs. Like,
Yes.
suburbs are disgusting.
Yeah. One more fucking strip mall and 2 extra lanes, and it'll be paradise, bro. We swear.
Never-ending construction.
and like
this is crazy.
And like 20 billboard signs of McDonald's and Wendy's everywhere, and
Yeah.
just crappy advertisements just plattered everywhere. It's just potholes everywhere, small sidewalks, no bike lanes.
the greatest
Horrible.
country in the world, and we can't
Oh my
fix our
god,
fucking roads.
it's so amazing. Fuck.
I
And
think
if you're in the Midwest, you get you have a billboard that says Jesus saves right next to the billboard for the adult bookstore.
Oh yeah, I've got those all over the place. In my
Yes.
Are you talking about that stretch outside of Oshkosh, Wisconsin?
I'm talking that I've been outside that stretch. Yes.
But that's
stretch is
the
also
one. No, there used to be
around,
every
so-
other one. I remember there was one though, because it was supposed to be about trafficking, and right, like they're like stop, which is like the first like legit. It was like a Christian group doing it, but I was like, hey, this is actually kind of like a legitimate critique of the porn industry, right? Like, worry about it, but like the picture that they used, like she was tied up with what was clearly like bondage rope, like sexy bondage rope, and I was like, y'all, like this is not the thing that you think it is. Like I don't like it's like you guys used the wrong stock photo. I promise. Like you should have picked something else.
Right.
man, it's just crazy, right? Like we're bombs. I'm reading this war crime act that we can just do, which goes to show you that there's no voting our way out of this situation, but we'll get to that in a second. But like, we're doing all this shit. There's $41 billion down the hole for a war that's stuck in stalemate now. And the other day, I think I said this on the pod, they're doing construction outside of my house, and I asked one of the guys what they were doing, and he's like, yeah, there's pipes underground that are like from 1918, and they're made out of copper, and we need to replace them. Why? Why is this happening now? It's over 100 years later, and you guys are doing it now? Like, that's crazy. How do we even pretend that we are somehow the bastion of the world, and we have water, drinking water running through 120-year-old pipes?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of not a coincidence. So, like, in the 20s, there was a wave of socialism at least in the upper Midwest, and to where like Milwaukee had a socialist mayor for a while, and they called them sewer socialists because that's what they did. They fixed all this infrastructure and they built new infrastructure and they made it last 100 years. They told the engineers like, we make it last 100 years, and like now it's all falling apart, and we haven't had any like socialists in since then. So we don't have any infrastructure because there's like zero influence from the actual left. And then like you'll see like Biden pass an infrastructure bill that is just like a big handout to more companies that's not going to fix anything and it's just going to keep falling apart. Yeah, it's like
You mean Build Back Better isn't working?
Oh man, have you read some of the stuff that's in there? So like they're supposed to have electric charging stations, and if you actually read the bill, that's not what it says at all. Not even a little bit. It says that they're supposed to have green energy refueling stations, which is a euphemism. If you read a little bit further, the money is split between electric stations and natural gas refilling stations.
Okay.
And so, like, what they're doing is switching over all the heavy trucking to natural gas so we can have a domestic fuel source for our trucking when World War III lights off, basically. Right. It's all, the whole thing, if you really look at, like, what they've been doing, the CHIPS Act, the Build Back Better Act, it's all putting our economy on a war footing towards China.
Well,
the
United States just called up, didn't they just activate a bunch of reserves or something? That happened today.
Yeah, I was about to say they were talking about activating the Selective Service.
What?
Cringe. Yeah.
For what?
To get ready. 3,000 reservists.
Yeah, there was some talk about the Selective Service for the future.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I feel like, I mean, while we definitely are getting prepared to go to war in some sense, I also think it probably has something to do with all these strikes happening. I mean, the WGA's on strike, SAG is going on strike, the Teamsters are about to go on strike, and even where, you know,
UPS.
where I may or may not work may be going on strike. So it's pretty ridiculous right now out there.
Yeah, and Olaf Scholz with Germany, or Schloss, whatever the fuck his name is, he just had a big statement today where he said China has changed and we're moving away from our economy away from China. So every Western country is agitating towards an eventual conflict with China. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, some of them are bucking the trend, though. Like you see, like ties with like Italy, France to a certain degree. Like they're being like maybe like they're trying to like straddle it, and then you see a bunch of other, because of the BRICS nations, a bunch of world countries, or rather like global South, moving towards closer to China. So like we were just seeing like everybody line up and pick sides.
Yeah, it's gonna be a second Cold War, which is great for the war machine. Even if it doesn't get used, it gets built.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, even during the first Cold War, it wasn't really a Cold War.
Right,
there were tons of hot wars.
It was
all these proxy wars.
Proxy wars, exactly. It'll be
and we're seeing it. We're seeing it right now. I mean, there's one right now, and we'll see a bunch more of them, and maybe eventually hot. Like honestly, like I think both sides are talking about a hot war with the South China Sea. Like they're talking about the things in Taiwan, and we'll see what happens with that. But it's frustrating.
Yeah, it'll be nice and convenient in the South China Sea that there is an ongoing people's war in the Philippines that will, despite China giving them no support, the Americans will,
in some instances.
Yeah, the Americans will absolutely say, "Oh, look, these pro-Chinese communist Maoists over here. We've got to stop them." So that's a good place to start a proxy war for the Yankees.
So how prepared do you guys think the United States is to fight a war like this? Because their proxy war is not going well. They are not allowing, it doesn't seem like they're allowing Ukraine into NATO. And I know, Rick, you wanted to talk about that.
Okay, so like I've been reading a little bit more in depth since we spoke earlier, but like what it seems like is that they've decided that Ukraine will eventually be in NATO, but like they're not going to negotiate with Ukraine as a bloc. right? And so like what that means is that the weapons deals won't be coming from NATO. Each individual NATO ally can send or not send Ukraine weapons, other help, aid generally, without NATO being involved directly. Like they're still worried about NATO antagonizing Russia, which is weird because like they're saying like definitely like Ukraine will join once the war is over. So like I don't see, it's like I guess they really just like don't want to trigger the Article 5.
Right, they don't want to, absolutely. And to be honest, this war is never going to be over. There is going to be conflict there for a long time.
Yep.
I really see it moving to the direction of Korea, which is like what you said, it's a new Cold War. That's like you look at the first time around, that's exactly what happened. The first out the gate, we went to war in Korea, and it never really ended. It just stayed like an open sword to this day, and we're about to do it again on the other side, right? Like that's it's. I think that some of the other wars that get kind of overshadowed by this is like when you look at what's been going on in Somalia. Like if you look at like geographically where all these countries are, Ukraine and Somalia, and what's going on with Israel, and what's recently happened with Libya, is like you see like a line. It's a line that separates the West and the East, and that's like where like there's a front line in all these different countries that it's all about like who's getting like essentially to prevent China from doing Belt and Road. Like that's what it's been about. And even I was watching a thing with a former CIA guy where he was talking about Afghanistan and saying that the reason that the U.S. stayed in Afghanistan for so long was to prevent China from doing Belt and Road there. And the first thing that happened when the U.S. pulled troops out is that China cut a deal with the Taliban to do Belt and Road. Yep. Like they're pushing westward, and so we know we can't win economically. We've been losing, and so like that's our only option. And yeah, I don't know. They seem like the directors.
Sadly, agree.
I think one of my favorite tweets I've seen in the last few years was someone talking about everything, and they said the point of the history book that we're in right now is the part where you start seeing maps get real arrowy.
I love it.
Like that's where we are in the history book. So when the children of the future read about that, that's what's happening, is the arrows are all moving.
Exactly.
So what you guys are saying is we can just vote harder.
Yeah. If you vote today, this is likely going to end.
Yeah.
Because
we're
vote Democrat, because the Democrats aren't doing any of this, obviously. Like It's very clear this is all the Republicans, and it doesn't matter if Joe Biden's in charge. This is all happening under Donald Trump, probably.
Right. What we're going to do is we're going to vote in 12 more years of the Chad Biden, Stark Brandon, and then we're just going to paint Trump as the soy face guy pointing for the next decade. and let me tell you, that will be freedom to the world, brother. I'll tell you what.
Right. Well, the Biden administration's already, full-blown communist. Sooner or later, he will step down, and Stalin Jr. will take his rightful place for the United Socialist States of America.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll be shipping, Stalin's body to North Korea so that way they can do their Juche necromancy, and then he will
bring him
his
back.
head.
Yami Park will be the vice president.
Yami Park.
I love the memes. The memes. Yeah, every single one of them.
I saw one that really killed me. It was talking about like the Hearts of Iron games, and it was like in Sweden, all they do is stare at a map all day for hours. And I love that because, I mean, I don't know. It's just like the juxtaposition of like Yami Park and then fucking Sweden and Hoi 4 and like all that connection to fascism, Sweden and Hoi 4, and I'm not going to elaborate. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just tickles me.
There is the connection for sure. There's a lot of Yahtzees that play map games.
They're playing as the Nazis, unironically.
Yeah.
No, for real, they're like living out their dreams of literally role playing AH.
Well, I mean,
See,
part of
communists are out here organizing and creating solidarity with the working class, and these motherfuckers are on like freaking role playing game.
Playing
Which,
fucking gamers.
Don't get me wrong, I love video games, okay? No. But let's just be real, okay? We gotta be out there, we gotta organize and agitate, like my comrades mentioned earlier.
Right.
Exactly.
The digital space is great to discuss how to organize in person, but it can't stop here.
Right, exactly. And, this, in the theme of our hypocrisy, going on cruises and, buying stuff from Amazon and also having a podcast of just dudes, there's more work that needs to be done. Like, I think the majority of us, I'm not going to say one way or another, are part of or work of or in Minecraft, some kind of organizations. And, if you're a listener and you are, more than just interested in learning, but you want to do something, then there are plenty of options. And
I also want to mention that there are some people who are physically able to organize and go out, which is totally fine. I think going online and even sharing, like for example, Yellow Parentiers sharing socialist, pro-socialist propaganda will help the cause. Or even if you do not want to do that, it's totally fine. You can just support people by liking, subscribing to their YouTube channels. Sorry, I had to plug that in.
No, for sure.
Like and a subscribe. You hit that notification bell so that you're notified to every single one of the collected videos, and then you're doing your part for the revs.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful plug, but no,
like the Starship Troopers meme. I'm doing my part.
Get in the mines. No, but Marta, you are 100% right. If you struggle, in certain ways, if it comes to, mobility or anxiety and just, in general, I don't know your situation, but if it's hard to get out of the house and your praxis is online, then that's totally fine. But for, our comrades out there who, if you are able to do so, then please do so. And then if you have other comrades yourself who may need assistance getting somewhere, or maybe you need, you have a friend who might need help, physically getting to a location for like a protest or some kind of reading group, then, help a homie out, because that really does go a long way.
I've been driving someone to their job every day for the last 2 years. Like that is mutual aid just as much as some of like the extreme large organizing, and everyone needs to understand that every little bit helps.
Exactly.
I agree. Get class solidarity and going out in your community, fellow people in your community, and not necessarily organize it, but just talk with people and get to know them, because not everybody's as evil as it portrays. Because that's one thing that is, some people might be individualistic, or but a lot of people, I like to think personally that not everybody is evil and inherently greedy, as a lot of people would like to say that humans are. But capitalism makes us greedy. Our material conditions,
But
how we live,
human nature.
But human nature, right? Yeah, that instantly, that just killed my argument.
Have you ever thought of human nature? Please.
Have you ever considered Venezuela?
Well, on paper it sounds good, but
you hate capitalism
human
so
nature
much.
would
Why are
never
you on TikTok?
Exactly.
We do live in a society. Yes.
Move to China.
Why did I order so much shit from Prime? I'll never know. Honest debate.
Champagne socialist.
I am, and I've said that the first episode.
Bezos' pockets.
No, you have to order shit from Temu so you can support Chinese revisionism.
Ooh.
Right? Why would I pay an American capitalist middleman to put some stuff in a warehouse for me when I could just buy it directly from the underpaid workers in the global South? And
Exactly.
it's I don't need somebody to middleman that for me. I can exploit my own workers.
Exactly. There's a Guatemalan child right now putting together $2 toys that I can buy. You know, why not?
I mean, like the amount of people that I've seen posting on TikTok with like the little slideshows where it's like anti-capitalist like slides, and then at the end it's like, here's my Temu link for you to get $500 off.
Bro,
I'm like, what is
crazy.
going
A lot of things on TikTok. Like, it will be like 4 or 5 the same slideshow, like anti-capitalist message, and it'll be like how to become a landlord at 10 easy steps, and all the videos are the same. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, it's like capitalism sucks, but that's because you're poor. You could be the capitalist if only you used my discount code on Temu.
I saw a guy on here the other day. He was like talking about like the word landlord. He's like, the landlord, like peasants work for the lord of the land. And what is the? Does this look familiar? Landlord, like you, landlord is redundant. You're just a lord, and so like, why don't you like get like if you don't own land, then you're a peasant? And it's like, yeah, exactly. And like, and then like he kicked me when I was like, there's a reason that all the lords got beheaded. Like, and then I got kicked, and I was like you guys forgot about the rest of that. Is that like feudalism was over because like the peasants rose up and. Like that's gonna happen again. Like eventually it has to. Like they can't continue to squeeze everyone. Speaking of like the Amazon thing, one of the strikes that's going on right now is UPS, or they're threatening to strike. And if they do strike, it's gonna put ripples through the entire system. I work for USPS and like is hanging on by a thread. Since COVID, a whole bunch of people retired because there's actually good retirement. Like the pension is actually decent, so a whole bunch of boomers retired, and it left a whole bunch of positions open that are being filled by people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. No one knows how anything works, and so it's kind of falling apart. And so we're about to get basically inundated with 2 or 3 times as many packages, and we won't be able to handle that stress. And so it's going to delay all the mail, the regular mail, in addition to like making everybody's packages come way slower. So I would say by the end of the summer, plan to not be getting things in prime 2-day shipping time anymore. That's like not going to be a thing.
Remember
that.
It's
going to be a perfect. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have a delay because I keep talking over everything. I remember a story a while ago where Amazon themselves is freaking out because they have a 150% turnover rate, and they did the math and they said by 2024 they're going to be out of employees. Like they're not going to be able to go. They're not going to be able to cycle people out anymore.
Look, I've quit the post office twice now. Like I moved to a different office, and like they're still like rehiring me, even though like I'm like basically quit in order to not get fired.
Right.
And but they're so desperate. They're like, wait, but you're already trained, and we don't have to wait like 3 months for the application process to go through. Like, okay, yeah, you're in. Like, even though they all hate me, it doesn't matter. Like they need somebody. They need somebody in there. Yeah. No, like they hate me for like pointing out all of the the basic things like workers' rights laws, like how you're not supposed to drive more than 11 hours in a day without a break. Like that's the I don't know, but no, I do think that it's fallen apart across the board.
How dare you care about workers and workers' rights? How dare you, communist liberal?
Yeah, well, it's wild because we have a union, but like you wouldn't know it by like the way people act.
Yeah.
Hey, doesn't sound like you have a union.
I was going to mention that any of the problems that are going to come from these packages, the neoliberals are of course going to say, "Ooh, look, this is why we have to privatize. Look, this is the inefficiency of government run. We need to privatize this, just like they did the because they operated a loss almost every single one of them."
The thing about the post office is it's next to immune to privatization. There's like almost nowhere that doesn't have a government post office because of that. Because like you have to subsidize getting information back and forth to rural areas and goods and like back and forth to rural areas. And if you don't subsidize it, the people in those areas are too poor to be able to overcome the subsidy, and then they won't be able to get stuff, and your whole economy goes to shit. But there's also certain things like we ship like dead people, we ship like live chickens.
You're just gonna say that casually?
Yeah. I have to deliver it casually. Yeah, no, people like cremated remains, like that's a thing. Yeah, if you want to get cremated remains from one place to another, other companies don't ship that like we do. Like it's
a neoliberal never saw a thing that existed that they didn't want to privatize. Challenge accepted is what.
They've tried so hard.
Yeah.
What's nice about it though, the reason that we have a union still is it's the one union the Republicans don't want to break because they want to destroy. They're like, the union's going to destroy the post office and make them go broke. So like that'll give us more reason to privatize it later. But no, the thing is like right now the post office exists as a subsidy for all these other services. So like UPS doesn't have to ship to every single door in any of these rural areas. They just drop it off at the post office, and my ass has to drop it off and get paid like next to nothing for those packages.
Right.
That's wild, dude. And it goes to show, again, and I brought up the point earlier, like, that we can't vote ourselves out of this situation. And I'll preface this with this, like, reform, this is a cringe moment for me, because now I'm going full mask off. Reform
Go on.
is not always a bad thing. When it comes to harm reduction, voting for Joe Biden
doesn't.
Right, there you go. Reform doesn't equal reformism. Like, voting for Joe Biden, that's not harm reduction. But, if you are fighting for a union to get people, extra, just that little bit of money, it's going to make the difference between somebody being able to afford groceries that week. That is a net good thing. And as Marxist-Leninists, we can strategize within those unions or support other local unions with furthering education to get people to start thinking, one, not only how to eventually in Minecraft cultivate a militant union, but to start doing work outside of that.
Absolutely. Agreed. 100%. That's it. That's the TikTok.
I know
it was a long TikTok, but that's the TikTok.
I was thinking, Larry, that's a good soundbite. Absolutely. Like, when we're big and famous and eventually betray the working class, I'll make sure we have a button that we push
that's
that.
within like our group provisions, the document that we all signed. It says eventually you will betray the working class.
Yes, I give it at least 13 days before I betray the working class.
Right.
I betrayed him once. I'll betray him again. I'll get myself some more New Balance clothing.
Stop the Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah,
our sponsor.
I am going to get the proper air freshener. I will not have this awful off-brand Lysol anymore.
Use promo code Kollectiv 1917 to save 25% off on your next order.
You see it like the beginning of one of my videos. It's just like Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh my
Join
god!
the wonderful.
No. It'd be like, it would be like one of Cruz's videos when he's talking about like the Battle of Stalingrad, and he'll be like, "Yeah, and the Soviets, they were real heroes." Just like the heroes in Raid Shadow Legends. And they have the music playing in the background. Oh my god.
Be one of a million wonderful players and get a 25% off at 13 gold if you download right now with my code Campanero Cruisin'. Like
you definitely watch way too much YouTube for how good you are at that.
We'll have our own rated like Shadow Legend skins. Because a lot of YouTubers end up getting their own skins dedicated after them, so we'll just get a bunch of like.
No, ultimately, I want the Call of Duty pin with like my face. That's just what I want.
I think I'd like to do a video with Mr. Beast. That'd be.
Oh, there we go.
That'd be it.
Mr. Beast and the Kollectiv ending capitalism in Minecraft, and we just go on like one of his Minecraft servers.
Right, and
This is
what were you gonna say?
kind of related, unrelated. My kid, who's 7, whenever like we're at the store and she wants me to buy something, and I'm like, we can't afford that right now. We didn't budget for that. She'll look at me dead ass and just be like, "Well, just call Mr. Beast. He has like $1 million. Just ask him. He'll buy stuff. He does it all the time." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Mr. Beast is like, I gave 5 communists $1 billion. Let's see what they do.
Just throw that all into like funding the Revo.
I mean,
Will they eat a burnt shoe for $6,000?
I mean, that was the secret with the Black Panthers, is they were getting like fat in Hollywood that were like funding a lot of those programs. No, we do. We need to convert some rich people. That's the real secret. We just need like one billionaire who's an actual communist.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get Danny DeVito by myself. Trust me, it'll happen.
That'd be a good episode.
Danny. We can definitely convert Danny.
We need a George Soros except real.
Yeah.
We need what Republicans say George Soros is.
I wish he was the monster you say he is.
No.
I wish so much. Like I remember one time we were at a rally and we had some Republican start calling us a bunch of like George Sorosites, and that I first I was so confused. I'm like, what? Because he saw Socialist on our shirt, a Freedom Roll Socialist organization, and he goes, Socialist? You guys are a bunch of George Sorosites? And like we're so confused, bro. Like I've never seen anybody rage so hard. And so like later on that night, I did some research. I'm like, oh my god. And just like Cruz said, I wish he was the evil villain you said he is. I wish.
Let me tell you, I will take one for the team, for the revolution. I will make it my life's goal to convert Jamie Lee Curtis. I will give her lap dances until she converts to the cause.
Until she joins the call.
Comrade Jamie Lee Curtis will fund the revolution, boys. We got it.
From what I've heard, you've had that track record, so I believe you.
Absolutely. I with the enemy, even you have to be subversive. Even Comrade Stalin, who was caught once in the act of robbing a house, was asked to service the owner of the house, or she would rat on him. So yeah. That's the legend, anyway. That's the legend.
Do you just close your eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, this cat, he doesn't know where he's at. He's got dementia, and I love him, but he'll just like stand up and then meow, and then just like go back to bed. Like he doesn't know what's going on.
Not a thought behind that little commie cat heads.
He's the best boy, but he was just agreeing when you were talking about Daddy Stalin servicing the class trader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bro said purr. Bro said purr.
Mm-hmm.
He said it's
That's
someone
how
say
Fidel
puss.
got not assassinated that one time. He decided they tried to send a femme fatale assassin against him, and she fell for him.
Yep.
Yeah, like one of the 527 times they tried to assassinate him.
Like the literal exploding cigar is my favorite, though. So like, just like
one of my favorite moments is when he showed up to New York, and they're like, "Do you have a bulletproof vest underneath your coat?" And he just opens up his coat and he shows his bare chest, and he's like, "I don't have one. I don't need one."
Yeah, that
Motherfucker was
clip is
oh my
fucking
god
fire.
He ate that, bro. He ate that. He ate it up, crunched it up, and threw it home, bro. Number one.
He ate it up and crunched it up.
I think my favorite fact about Fidel is that Justin Trudeau is his son. And like nobody talks about
That's the
it.
funniest shit ever.
Okay. But have you seen that picture of like Justin Trudeau's mom and Fidel, and like her just like staring at him,
Yeah, dude.
salivating, like so. Like I get that, like that's probably like she just has a type. Like the other dude kind of like looks not too dissimilar, but like for real though, like they were known to be swingers, so like it's not.
No, for sure. That's exactly what happened. He's just got that Riz, dude.
It's
God
it's
damn. And now
it's an accepted part of communist canon at this point. There's no arguing it.
when we eventually purge the history books, as communists do, we're definitely going to say that 110%.
Apparently, Ho Chi Minh was also notoriously slutty.
He was a dog. Yeah, he had that
Yeah.
dog in him.
I
more
heard
like-
he was more like Hung Chi Minh.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. He was rocking that heavy glizzy, is what I hear.
Did somebody say Glizzy?
Yeah.
What kind of glizzy are we talking? Like 100% beef?
Uncle Ho? Absolutely. Nothing but the finest.
All right, someone's crunching in the background.
What happened? Did somebody just...
Is that you, Cruz? You son of a
That is
bitch.
not me this time. That was me
Okay.
last time. I learned my
To be
lesson.
fair, it didn't sound like incredibly loud, so I didn't think it was you at first, but I figured I'd ask.
I think the feds dropped their listening device or something.
They always be doing that, and it definitely wasn't me.
They open their mic and their bag of chips as they're eating, they just started crunching against the mic.
They
Not today,
would,
FBI.
they
Not
will
today.
do something stupid like that and get caught, though. But probably shouldn't tell my example on live, but...
Well,
But yeah, I guess we're coming up on
All right,
we're coming
right,
up on
I'll
like
do that.
I guess the last hour here, so I guess let's try to talk about.
Oh man.
go ahead.
So have you all read the last David Graeber book? I know he's an anarchist, but his whole deal about this is a book called The Dawn of Everything, and I just finished it, and it's pushing up against my Marxism, because he's going on about these different historical societies and how like detached a lot of them are from the material conditions that make them up, or like how two different similar societies could have like near identical material conditions, but at the same time like they have completely different cultural practices and like separate economies. And I don't know, I find the idea really interesting, because he talks about schismogenesis and this idea that like we make decisions about societies that are often based on like the contradiction itself. So like if you have a society that does things a certain way, the people that rebel against that society are going to do it the exact opposite way. And so you have this sort of like the same with like the Maoist contradiction thing, where like you have these different contradictions and the synthesis, antithesis combining, but like without like sometimes his argument basically is that humans are political by nature, and so our half of the dialectic is as important as the material half, is essentially, I think, is his argument. It's kind of like pretty vague, because he's like, this is just the beginnings of like coming up with this alternative thing. I don't know. I think it's interesting, and it is kind of a divergence from Marxism.
Now,
But-
was he using this point to argue against Marxism, or was he just using this point as a critique?
He's arguing not against Marxism as like a modern economic practice, but rather like historical materialism.
Right,
he's
yeah,
saying that like maybe historical materialism is a step too far, and that like well, it's true that like humans are a product of their environment. They're as much a product of like their political beliefs, and like he's also saying like because the main this is kind of like a side part of the book towards the end, but the main thrust of the book is that humans have had these varied political and economic structures throughout their whole history. There's never been a point in which most humans on Earth lived under the same economic structure, and that's something that like a lot of economists just in general, also like the Marxists, the Austrians, like the Keynesians, they all think that like, okay, some point in history humans had this like basic economic structure where they all XYZ. barter system, or there was a gift economy, or there was like, you know, primitive communism or whatever. But he's saying like there's not really. He's saying like the more evidence that we have, when we look at the evidence of ancient civilizations, and we look at all the anthropological evidence, there's no evidence for this. Like there's like we've always had dramatically different economic systems, including as ones, and he brings up some tribes that I had never heard of this, that are basically feudal systems during the winter and completely like egalitarian anarchist systems in the summertime. Like when there's like an abundance of food, there's no system or all, but like towards the fall, they all like the people get together and they build up food stores and then declare somebody a king, and that's who decides who gets what all winter long until the springtime. And they'll even use different names. Like you will have a different name in the summertime and the wintertime, which is which I guess kind of leans more into the material. The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Weingaro. It's his book that is posthumous, like because he died in 2020.
So, take on that materialism.
It's not really set out as a critique of that. It's a critique of the idea of the Enlightenment, basically. So it's really more of a critique of liberalism and like the liberal history in general, but also it's like kind of a critique. It's not so much a critique. It's like putting forth a different way to look at history that isn't based in historical materialism. So it's like it's really meant to critique it. It's just to be like an alternative lens, I guess.
And I having a background in anthropology, I really appreciate David Graeber, and I get what you're saying. I'm gonna have to read the book. I haven't, and I will say that if you read a lot of Marxists, they don't just break it down to this is the only form of economy that existed. Like Marx talked about, specifically European development because that's where he was from, things like that. But he also talked about the differences in the so-called Asiatic modes of production, et cetera, like that. I don't think that Marxist critiques don't take into account other modes of production that have existed. I think it was focused on the ones that were dominant over the most of the population. So when they talk about evolving from so-called primitive communism, which wasn't primitive communism because hunter-gatherers all existed in vastly different ways, which were largely determined by equal parts, I think, their material conditions and their contributions. So I don't see it so much as material conditions causing solely human behavior. It's more of a feedback loop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess like part of what he's saying is that it's not just a feedback loop between the material conditions and the people, but also between people and each other. That sometimes people make cultural decisions simply to be antagonistic towards another culture or another tradition, and like I think we see that in the evolution of a lot of just thought in general. But that like kind of does. I think that like when you start leading on like, okay, maybe some history is the result of ideologies and individuals, and it kind of moves a little bit away. But it's not a complete divergence. I don't think. It's not saying like this is wrong entirely. It's just saying like maybe we need a little bit more nuance to this.
Absolutely, I agree.
And I think it's
so. Yeah, are they making like a distinction between like people and like material conditions, like like rocks and oil and shit like that, or because like I feel like if you put like people as like a part of those material conditions, like it kind of it still works, if you know what I mean, because like when you bring up like one culture making an action in reaction to another culture, like isn't that responding to material stimulus, if you know what I mean? Like an action upon the material conditions that they now have as a result of another culture.
Yeah, I guess it does kind of make sense. Like it is still material. I think it's like one thing when it's about, but like some of it is just about like the ideas or even the idea of another culture. And I think that's the other thing. Like that's the main point of the book is that the Enlightenment which includes like Marxist thought, because like the Enlightenment is like some of the things that led to like Hegelian thought and all that shit, right? So it's like
Right.
when you look at like the European Enlightenment, his argument is that like it came about not necessarily through direct interaction with indigenous people in North America, but because the idea of there's another way to live. Like for the longest time, like Europeans had gotten really used to the feudal system, and anywhere you go, like they're constantly comparing it to like being identical to them, and then they found people that didn't have kings, and they weren't living under the feudal, and like that created like a spark of thought, and like that's what created the Enlightenment. Not so much, not necessarily the conditions of industrialization or like the winds from colonization, although those obviously have to play a factor in it too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to that. When the when the colonists were looking at systems to adopt in ways, they were heavily influenced by the Iroquois Confederacy, which they never fucking tell you in school, but it was a big influence on them. So yeah, I think his observation's right, because I found that out when I started taking anthropology courses in college, where the Iroquois were as big an influence on how the government would be shaped and some of their ideas that they had for it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to it. Graeber is pretty based.
I'll have to check him out. I hadn't ever heard of him until just now.
Yeah, I've never heard of him, but I'll definitely check that book out. Book read? You guys want to do a book read?
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty solid.
We could try it.
We could try it. I mean, if not, we could start with something short. But yeah, I wanted to bring up one topic quick. Or now let's, Rick. I mean, you still have the stage, brother. You got anything else? You're our.
I mean, we can keep this one too.
No,
Yeah, we could also keep talking about this.
That was like what
Yeah.
I think that's the only one I really remember from the other night. What were you gonna bring up, Morte?
I was gonna bring up. I was just gonna ask you guys if you guys heard about America. They have a submarine that's stationed at Guantanamo Bay that's filled with nukes, basically, and they're stationed there. And Cuba's wondering why they're doing that. They've already asked for, the dismantlement of Guantanamo Bay and all that. And I'm just wondering, have you guys heard about that? What do you guys think about that?
I wasn't aware, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, it's because they
everywhere.
suspect that China has
A spy base, yeah.
a spy base there, and so they have literal nukes stationed at Cuba right now, in a way to intimidate them. And Cuba's like, what the fuck is going on? There's no spy base here, so they're furthering tension, with China, and it's escalating to a possible World War III.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy to say, but I think it's a chance. I think there might be a World War III ahead of us, guys. And
I think in a lot of ways we have to accept that the Third World War has begun, and it's begun a long time ago. Because we are consistently always antagonizing, always war posturing, always fighting these proxy wars. I'm just saying I would not be surprised if, and I'm going to be optimistic here, when we survive this, and maybe not us, but humanity, when we survive this, we will be able to trace back that this World War started probably immediately after World War II, to be honest.
Well, that's actually an interesting topic, because World War II in general, there's a lot of debate on like when you might say it started. With some people will say 1941 when America entered the war. Others will say like 33 when Japan and China started going to war. And some will go all the way back to the end of the First World War, kind of like what you just did, where it's like World War III started at the end of World War II. So it'll be interesting to see, like, as time progresses, like what what do we say is the actual beginning of the Third World War?
I think looking at as a true Marxist, looking at these things as separate events like World War I and then World War II is incorrect. These are just more class antagonisms, just it's imperialism resolving its contradictions, and we were for a long time stuck in unipolarity, and now that seems to be breaking, and the conflicts are going to broaden and intensify. It's just looking at these things as World War I and World War II, like how can you? It's once you kind of have this understanding of the world, it's hard to look at it the way a liberal does, because and it's so hard to break through to them, like to get them to take a step back and look at how things are working.
It's the same when you just talk about the Ukraine war. Like, you could say the Ukraine war started in February 2022. You could have said it happened in 2014. But you could also say that the Ukraine war was destined to happen the second the Soviet Union was dissolved, right? Like, exactly. Of course it's good. Like this is an inevitable thing. So, like, of course, like the second that like they did, like the world. Independence movement in 1992, this was going to happen.
Yeah,
they knew this was going to happen.
They had an attempted color revolution in 2004.
Right. Exactly. It's been the consistent, like, leading up to this, and like there's been fighting the whole time. Mm-hmm. Like, it's never really not like it was maybe more akin to like gang warfare, and now it's more like it's an actual like war. But like, there's never really a point at which you can like make a clean cut and say like this is when it started, this is when it ended. They just bleed one into the next. And I remember on January 6th, actually, I was watching C-SPAN before anything happened, or before I knew anything was going to happen, because I just wanted to see like what they were going to do with the votes. Like, was Pence going to throw some shit, and like what were the Republicans going to try to do? I was just like watching, just popcorn, right? And they had this newly elected Dem on, and they were interviewing him. And they were like, he's like the war guy. He's like former Marine or some shit, and like he wants to be on the National Security Committee, all that stuff. And he's talking about, he's like, we need to end the war in Afghanistan and pull our troops out. And then he like takes a single breath, and then he's just like, because we need to like move our troops to the South China Sea where the real enemy is. I'm just like, holy shit! Like, you guys are just, you're not even pretending. Like, you're just like, we need to get it, and that's what we've been doing ever since. Like, we've just been moving everything, moving all the chess pieces around, surrounding it. I'm not surprised about the nuclear submarine thing, because we're moving all these other like in the Pacific. We're like moving everything up to the as far as we can get it, as close as we can get it, and expanding. Like, Japan's Navy is going to be a thing again. It's on. And
Japan should not have a navy. They shouldn't have an army. We all know what happened the last time they had a free.
Correct. Army. Some of the worst war crimes in human history.
They deny basically all of them to this day, which is tweet. I spit.
They're in a competition with the Yanks to see who can deny more war crimes.
You ever hear a story about the German officer that was present during the Nanking? And he went back to Germany to complain about what the Japanese were doing.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and there was
a perspective on like how awful it was what they were doing there.
Right. There was a German officer also in Nanking that was he was their version of Oskar Schindler. He was helping lots of Chinese escape prison camps and such. I don't. It's been a while since I read up on him. I don't remember if the Germans ever caught him, but if they did, they shot him, I'm sure.
Again, right. 100%, he did not make it.
And before some weirdo in the audience listens to this episode and hears us saying how awful Japanese war crimes were, doesn't justify the nuke. He killed a crazy amount of civilians doing that.
No.
When that's not even up for debate. Like, no, it wasn't effective. Didn't contribute to them surrendering. So get that idea out of your head.
It was literally a flex to say, "Hey, world, look what we got."
Right. Exactly.
Specifically,
no
Soviets,
communists.
look what we got.
No communist should ever be pro nukes against any working class members of society.
Right, exactly. And commenting on this nuclear sub, like, I mean, a nuke going off is bad. It's basically every single natural disaster happening at one time. And if Cuba had maybe 2 or 3 tactical nukes deployed on an island, I mean, oh my God, it would be an untold amount of destruction, because who's going over there to help them, to save them? You know, it's huge. But
I mean, it would also
you know, I'm
affect,
glad
Florida and all the other Caribbean islands too. So like, it wouldn't be only like screwing over Cuba. It would be like the fallout would, because of wind patterns, obviously, it would get through the entire United States and into Mexico, all over the Caribbean. I mean,
Florida and all
I
that.
was gonna say, like, imagine a hurricane passing through, like it always does, and just grabbing all of that and bringing it to the U.S.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. But speaking of, the nuclear sub, Martin, you mentioned China. I can't believe I wanted to bring this up and I totally forgot about it. So they confirmed that the balloon that Biden shot down didn't have shit. It did not spy on us. It was literally just a balloon.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I don't know if y'all followed the other balloons that got shot down that were not from China.
Yeah,
and one of them was from Ham Radio.
There was more
Club.
balloons.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one that got shot down over the Alaskan-Canadian border. Mm-hmm. They scrambled the jets to shoot down this balloon, and it was launched by a ham radio club in northern Illinois. Like, it was an $18 balloon. 18 fucking dollars with like another maybe like $100 worth of ham radio gear on it, right? Yeah. And like the thing is, like, these kind of balloons, tons of companies use them for all sorts of things. Yep. What was going on? This is the thing. This is why they were being really cagey about it. Is the balloon was for mapping stuff, right? Like, they're doing Google Maps except better, and they can get higher resolution and for cheaper, right? Like, because like the private companies don't have access to all of, like, the military satellites and all that shit, and satellite access is expensive and launches are expensive. And so, like, if you're trying to start like you want to try a different sort of scanner for topography or like whatever, you want to try some stuff, you launch a balloon that, and there was a private company in China that did that, and it lost track of it because you can't really steer. You can't steer balloons. It's like the idea that they invaded your airspace with a balloon is silly because you can't steer them. Like, that's the whole thing. It's a balloon. Like, people act like hot air balloons or like fancy like they don't. They just know, like, the way it works is like you just check to see what the wind's going to do the day beforehand, right? And like, if it doesn't do that, your balloon doesn't go where it was fucking supposed to. And like, we were just, but no, like they used to be balloons like that flew over all the time. People, like amateurs flying all over the world. Like, there's like usually the only deal is like you have to turn off your transmission radio when you fly over like North Korea or like Israel or whatever. But like, other than that, like, they're like, this used to be like open skies kind of thing.
Israel, I think you mean Israel isn't real,
right?
AKA Palestine.
Got him.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that country. Can you? What?
Occupied Palestine.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
That place. Right.
Well, you guys didn't stop me when I said North Korea. That's the DPRK too. So like,
we are revisionists.
Remember, we're not true communists. We shop at Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we own iPhones also.
I have an iPhone and a Mac, so
I have an Xbox
and a Mac. You rich fuck. Bourgeois.
I don't understand.
I got it for free.
Well, so if I have a Google,
just like a
Chromebook,
lazy
does that make me a
commie.
commie?
I didn't work for it.
You didn't work for it, commie.
I have Google Phone Service too.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, Google Fi. It's so they could track you all over the whole planet.
Well, they can track every phone already. Sounds like DC China.
Sounds like Big Brother.
Sounds like that fluoride in the water.
In the water.
Yeah. Sounds like that fluoride, not the lead in the water, but the fluoride that the government put there.
I'm here for the microplastic, personally.
No, because don't get me started on the shit with like the whole water turning the frogs gay thing, because like it's like low key true, but he's wrong at the same time, and it's kind of wild.
What? What do you mean low key
that someone
true?
had made about that?
Because he tries
The-
pushing an agenda while he's not wrong, but he tries pushing an agenda while he does it, so he's wrong.
Well, he's like low key accurate because of the fact that I forgot what it was called, but it was like a compound that a company was putting into the water, and it was making the frogs become hermaphrodites.
Based.
Yeah.
The PFAS thing, that's like the big one that's going on.
Have
They
some of
can't
that.
get rid of. Yeah, PFAS is everywhere. Because what it was is they use it to spray it, like, okay, it's a firefighting foam for airport runways, and so they like spray this foam all over the runway, and then it gets into the water table and like never ever goes away ever. And if you're near an airport, like a military base where they have like flights out of, they use tons and tons of it because they do training on how to use the spray. And they also like had a system up until very recently where they'd have, like, by law, they had to go out and just like spray it all over to make sure it works every 6 months. And so they just been, for absolutely no reason, just like spraying this toxic chemical that goes into our water table just for the fuck of it for like decades.
But what about
The
Updog?
wonders of the market never cease.
Yeah.
But what about Updog?
Yes. What
Up, dog?
about Updog?
I don't like the tone you used with me, so we're ending the podcast. I jest.
We are going to tone police you here
You have to put me
Heavily.
in the gulag.
heavily.
Well, we are authoritarian broadcasting.
Absolutely.
All right, boys. I think we did it. Unless anyone's got final thoughts. Rick, any final thoughts?
Yeah, unless you want to talk about like the China what was it? China
Oh, the
like
hackers.
swapping over to petroleum or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing that like there's some reformism going on, and like as like a resident China stan, I'm like I'm a little worried about the Chinese energy system because of the war in Ukraine and the change in like the global energy thing. Just recently, Xi met with the energy ministry in China, and they've decided that they're going to move more towards expanding or moving more of the oil industry into the private market, which is a heinous decision. They have been having shortages because they've been trying to push the green energy expansion and do all this offshore wind and all this other stuff. But I think that because of the low water levels and the droughts, there's not enough hydropower to make up for it, and they can't just crank up the production of the renewables. They don't have enough storage to make up for the fact. So like they're going to have to switch over to fossil fuels, but also it's kind of a geopolitical thing because they want to make sure that the fossil fuels being expensive hurts on the global market, will hurt Western countries more than it'll hurt China in the long run, because they have so much more of a renewable energy makeup. It'll particularly hurt the U.S. in our efforts to like sanction. If he's buying all this fossil fuel, it's going to hurt their economy, and so like China has to make up the difference to kind of prop up the BRICS, like the other BRICS countries, and also the deals that they're making with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Like they're gonna need to increase their use of fossil fuels.
I kind of saw that coming with the inclusion of Iran and Saudi Arabia in this deal. That was something I thought would be coming down the pike. I'm disappointed. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, especially because they're opening up to market players and foreign investment, which I'm guessing will be mostly from Saudi Arabia. Like that's the foreign investment. And the other thing that is in particular, the section of the industry that they're focusing on is exploration, particularly in China. So a lot of it is about energy sovereignty too. Like they want to make sure that they have their own local supplies. So they'll be hiring most likely Saudi and Iranian and other Middle Eastern companies to come in and do exploration and drilling.
Well, hopefully, like Larry said, it's not surprising, disappointing, but not surprising. I guess we can hope at the end of the day that, this is a decision being made because the Chinese and the party feel as if this is something that has to happen in order for them to continue to compete against the global hegemon of the United States. And hopefully one day when that is no longer an obstacle for them, they can go and, I don't want to say return because it's always a process, but return to something more in line philosophically of what the working class truly need.
There's a lot of zigs and zags in building socialism, and China has made a lot we all disagree with. I think to a person that we would say, I wish they hadn't done that. But at the end of the day, it's sticking to the path as long as the zag doesn't become a full right turn.
Yeah, I'm not. It's definitely not a change in. It's. You can definitely see it's very localized to this particular part of the sector of logistics exploration.
Yeah.
Like it's targeted. It's not like they're talking about a total shift. They did use the terminology "deepening reforms," which I'm just like, ooh, that's some dang stuff. Like, like you're freaking like that's it's very very dangest language. But
damn you, Deng Xiaoping! Damn you!
Yeah.
It's the contradictions within the party that I'm most worried about. Like, if the capitalist rotors start becoming more and more dominant, which they aren't at the moment, it's very much the centrist G clique in charge. It's if the capitalist rotors and the Jeffersonian liberals that they have there, if we start seeing them take over the party like you did with post Khrushchev, then we can really worry about where China's going to go.
Yeah, then we have a problem.
The thing that I worry about with this particular move, though, is the climate impact.
Oh, of course.
From what I've seen, like there's a growing idea in geopolitics that the global north is essentially using climate change as a weapon against the rise of China and India, because just geographically, the worst fallout from climate change will be in China and India, and I think that they're kind of biting themselves in the ass in this regard. Even though it's going to bring the world closer together, or the world closer to China, I bet it kind of depends on how hard they lean into it and how serious they are about continuing their green energy expansion. But it's definitely like without China leading the way on green energy, the world is kind of effed because of their position as the world's manufacturing center. A lot of the energy that's being used is being used there, and a lot of the development of the green energy technology is being done there, particularly the cheap stuff, right? Like, if you want it done cheaply, China is currently making offshore wind cheap, and if they are successful at that, it's pretty much over for other forms of energy, because offshore wind, if the build is cheap, the energies sometimes it creates things like negative energy prices, which will throw a huge wrench into capitalism. But without China doing that, I think long term it could really push that horizon of negative price energy way further down the line.
And I think I should add too, as much, I think this is a very healthy criticism of, what I still say is existing socialism, or, a country, a nation that's experimenting with socialism. I don't want any listeners here to think that this is now somehow an excuse for us to support the global hegemon that is the United States and its aggression towards the United States. I know we understand that, but I do want to say, if there are any baby leftists and listening to this now or in the future, this is not a go ahead to and also China is
just a criticism.
And even then, to be clear, they are still the leader in clean energy and electrification. As far as that, especially when you look at the global south and developing countries and like being able to develop towards clean energy, China's like they're kind of their only option. It's so much more expensive in what Europe and the U.S. are offering in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Right, for sure. All right.
He does bring up a good point of how, just kind of to throw it on there real quick, how when we discuss a country like China, how we have to be careful with how we criticize it, when we criticize it, and where we criticize it, so that we don't give ammo to, U.S. outlets or Western media outlets that will just take our words and say, look, like you just said, like, look, it's the bad guy, and turn people away from socialism in general.
Right.
It's a delicate kind of balancing act we got to play.
Well, the thing is, what China is doing is also like in reaction to what the West has done to the global political sphere. If it wasn't for the war in Ukraine, and if it wasn't for our attempts to strangle China's economy, they wouldn't have to do this, right? Like they wouldn't have to try to get like these countries to like. They wouldn't have to sweeten the deal by buying all this oil. They wouldn't have to deal with buying up. They wouldn't have been able to buy up all those Russian oil assets on the cheap, and it would have been more expensive for them to do this route than the other route. And there's like so many things that like it's to me it's more of a critique of what's happening with the global hegemony and with forcing China to work so on track. It's forcing them off the track to compete, and that's the shitty end of the stick when it comes to capitalism. Like they can't really escape that any more than we can. They have to keep the lights on, and that's the thing. Is like they don't have a lot of other options.
Yeah, that's the huge mistake that ultra lefts run into, is that they somehow think that socialism is being built in a vacuum. It's not. It's being built in even in the 20th century, a very, very interconnected global economy. And they are competing against a system which we know how exploitative it is and how ruthless it is. And competing with it is basically surviving it and reacting to it, because it's still the dominant system, and it basically lays the foundations that socialism currently has to work under. So, idealism is not going to save you. Critical support for these existing socialist countries.
Yeah.
Always.
Forever.
They're not building it in a vacuum.
Common W. Love to hear it.
All right, boys. I think we did it. Rick, thanks a lot for coming on to Kollectiv number 4.
Terrific.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good having conversations with you, comrade.
Yeah, you're based as hell, my friend. You have anything you want to plug?
No.
All right.
A true comrade. Plugging.
Oh, he's better than that.
Well, everybody follow him on TikTok.
No, just that David Graeber book. Go read it. Dawn of Everything. It's good stuff.
Thank you for sharing that.
Can we find out who's got any stocks in that?